Please note, it is at this point that the divide between the three routes begins. If you would like to continue to the Fate route with Saber or Heaven's Field route with Sakura, please select the appropriate video from the description below. Otherwise, continue watching for the Unlimited Blade Works route with Rin. The following day, Shirou senses something strange around the school, but stays late to help with a task. That night, he hears a sound and goes to investigate, only to witness Archer and Lancer dueling. He's spotted during Lancer's noble phantasm, and Shirou finds himself running for his life to no avail, as Lancer catches up to him in the halls of the school and stabs him cleanly through the heart. Strangely, he doesn't die instantly, and instead, a few moments later, Rin finds him, resuscitates him, and leaves. When he wakes, he stumbles home only to learn Lancer has followed him back and now moves to kill him again. Determined to at least fight for his life, Shirou reaches for a nearby poster tube and uses his single reinforcement spell to transform it into a metallic sword-like weapon. Seeing this, Lancer mocks and toys with Shirou, during which Shirou makes it to his tool shed. On the floor of his tool shed is a magic circle left by his father Kiritsugu he's never really considered, and as he curses his impending death, a light flashes out and the 7th servant, one of the Saber class, appears and immediately reacts to save Shirou from Lancer. As Lancer backs off, Shirou sees his savior is a young girl in knight's armor. As Lancer prepares his noble phantasm to kill her, Gabolg, it pierces Saber, but somehow she avoids an instant death, and in doing so, identifies the man's true heroic name. However, Lancer's master chooses to recall him, and so he leaves. As things calm down immediately, Shirou is confused to the state of now being a master, but Saber now detects two more foes outside, jumping out to greet Rin and Archer. Ambushing them, she nearly kills Archer and bears down on Rin, though after burning one command spell, Shirou halts Saber and is shocked to find out Rin is involved in all of this. Ordering Saber to stand down, she does so under protest, and reading the scene, Rin proposes they all go inside, as it's clear Shirou has no idea what's going on. As they talk, Rin quickly learns Shirou knows close to nothing about magic at all. In return for sparing her life, she explains everything to him, including the Holy Grail War and how the Battle Royale game is won. Though, Shirou still has many questions, so she takes him to see the priest supervising the whole war. The priest Kirei seems pleasant enough, but smiles strangely when learning Shirou's last name of Emiya. As he clarifies things, Rin points out the war is to determine the last servant standing, so it's not strictly necessary to kill the masters, but it usually ends up happening since the easiest way to beat a servant is to kill the master behind it. In the event a master is killed, a servant lingers until its magical energy depletes, during which they can form a new contract with a master who has lost a servant and still has at least one command spell. Thus, killing masters is more effective in that regard too. Alternatively, if a master has used all their command spells and thus loses control of their servant, they may seek sanctuary of this church for the duration of the war. Shirou objects that an evil person can get the Holy Grail easily, and Kirei says then the easiest thing is to simply win himself, else another side effect of the war, like the blaze that killed Shirou's family 10 years ago, will occur again. He also mentions the Grail will choose its own master, and unworthy ones will be rejected, as he found out as he was a participant in the last Holy War himself. He says Shirou should be happy, as his personal wish of becoming a hero is able to come true, and there is indeed a villain in this war he can defeat. Regardless, Shirou decides to stay in the Holy Grail War, which has now officially begun. As they leave, Rin mentions how Kirei is her second teacher, but originally he was a senior apprentice to her under the same teacher, her father. She also mentions he's untrustworthy, hence why she didn't even tell him what class she has. Still, once they return home, she breaks off, explaining that now he knows the rules, their enemy is starting tomorrow. Though, as soon as she leaves, the small silver-haired girl from before now appears, this time with a giant of a man beside her. She recognizes Rin and introduces herself as Ilia Einsbern, a family name Rin also recognizes. Wasting no time to attack two masters at once, Ilia commands her servant Berserker to kill them all. Acting quickly, arrows from Archer streak down and strike at Berserker with perfect aim, but surprisingly no effect. Not hesitating, Saber moves in to intercept Berserker, doing her best to parry his mighty blows, but even she can barely hold her ground. Falling back to a graveyard, they use the gravestones as cover to tip the scales in their favor, as Saber can dodge and strike between the obstacles that Berserker is forced to cleave through. At this time, Archer has taken the time he needs to prepare his killing blow, letting loose his special noble phantasm that explodes against Berserker, blowing away Shirou and Saber. The arrow struck true, but Berserker's toughness is unreal as it's still standing among the flames. Shirou spots the arrow Archer used, and notes it's not so much an arrow and more like a sword with an ornate hilt and spiral blade, before it melts away. Though Archer is a great distance away, Shirou's excellent vision can somehow see him clearly, smirking as if the impact of the arrow was intended not just for Berserker. Still, Ilia is impressed by Archer and pulls back Berserker, allowing them to live for now. Recovering, Saber pulls a piece of shrapnel out of Shirou's back and notes how the wound begins self-healing on its own conveniently enough as Shirou himself passes out. As he rests, he dreams of a barren landscape full of thousands of swords stuck in the ground. When he wakes, he realizes it was Rin that carried him home, and despite her claim of them being enemies, he thanks her anyway as she takes her leave. Reflecting, he realizes it was Rin that also saved his life earlier when he died to Lancer. Looking for Saber now, he finds her instead back to normal, wearing normal clothes. He speaks with her, establishing they are partners now in the battles ahead, and he's glad she refuses to harm innocents to gain an edge. He also asks her real name, but she politely refuses, explaining that if he knew, because he's so weak, anyone can use magic to pull the information from him. As an amateur master, Shirou lacks the ability to replenish the magical ability of a servant naturally, so expenditures of energy like using her noble phantasm will be limited. He gets a call from his teacher and guardian, Fujimura, to deliver some lunch to the archery club, and Saber accompanies him on the way to school, noting a strong lingering magical presence. Ayako, the archery club president there, laments how Shirou, their undisputed best archer, chose to leave the club, while Fujimura and Sakura are surprised to learn Saber is living with Shirou for now and insist on doing the same. At the same time, Rin is doing her own investigating, finding the remains of an incident by a servant, observing their life energy flowing to Ryoto Temple, concluding this is likely the work of the caster servant, and electing to go on the attack. The next day, Shirou goes to school, noting a strange heavy atmosphere and how Shinji is strangely absent. Soichiro, the strict teacher in charge of the student council, also reports that Ayako has suddenly gone missing since yesterday's archery club, and Shinji was the last person seen to talk to her, yet Shirou knows Shinji wasn't at the archery club yesterday. Classes are cancelled early, and Rin is furious at Shirou walking around without a servant. Dropping into a deadly serious mood, Rin reveals the gravity of Shirou's foolish vulnerability in this invisible war, and openly attacks him with killing intent. Cornering him in the one-sided duel, she demands his command spell, but before he can defy her they are interrupted when they hear the scream of a student nearby. They drop their fighting and hurry to discover a normal student has been drained of their life force. As Rin heals her, Shirou senses something and shields her from a sneak attack by a new servant. Running out, he's surprised to see Shinji and parries the chain daggers thrown out by a woman in black, which surprises even her. Cornered quickly, Shirou is about to be killed by this servant when Rin now hits her with a surprise attack of her own, forcing her away and saving Shirou. In return for saving her life back there, she gives him first aid and doesn't continue her attack from before. She takes him back to her house for medical attention, but both of them are surprised to find that by then, his wounds are almost all healed on their own. Asking her about the other master at their school, Rin reveals she knows a boundary field has been set up around the school, sucking the life out of the students there in order to strengthen another servant, and once it's complete, everyone inside will die. She then offers a truce between them to cooperate in order to find and defeat the master behind the boundary field before it activates. Feeling strongly about innocent people getting caught up in this war like he was in the past, Shirou agrees. They spend the rest of the evening talking and getting to know each other, especially their magic backgrounds. Shirou's father was a lone wolf magus who never passed on his magic crest and didn't want Shirou to become a magus, while Rin is a descendant of the noble Tosaka lineage, a long-standing and prestigious bloodline. She offers to have Archer escort him home, and inexplicably, both Shirou and Archer have a mutual instinctive dislike of each other. As they go home, Archer reveals he has already had his wish fulfilled before he died, and thus has no interest in the Holy Grail, but like other servants cannot resist it summoning him. Once home, Shirou catches Saber up to events, and that night he continues to have this strange battlefield dream, this time of an unknown man who has fought earnestly to save others and offered his life as sacrifice in order to use the power of a hero to pursue his ideal. At school, Shinji is back, acting oddly smug about Ayako being found, alive but severely hurt, and Shirou suspects him of being a master. That afternoon, Shinji stops Shirou and reveals he is not only a master, and the woman in black is his servant, but he also knows Shirou and Rin are working to dismantle his boundary field. He offers his partnership to Shirou, who turns him down, though Shirou still keeps his guard up as he's unsure of Shinji's intentions. That night, as Rin prepares for a counterattack, Shirou chooses to undergo training with Saber in order to slightly increase his survivability in battle. That night, a hypnotizing voice calls out to Shirou, and he is compelled to walk out to answer it. His mind wakes, but his body is still being manipulated as he is called to Ryoto Temple, where a witch-like woman waits for him. Shirou identifies her immediately as a servant caster, and she gloats that she specifically charmed him out here because she knows he is the weakest master. She reveals she has been siphoning energy from everyone in town, and has constructed a temple here in order to protect herself as she does so. She moves to take Shirou's command spell from him, intending to take control of Saber herself and use her to defeat Berserker. At this time, Saber notes the absence of Shirou and sees a suspicious magic trail leading out of the house. Swiftly following it, she arrives at the temple, but her rescue is halted when a man, introducing himself as Sasaki Kojiro, the servant assassin and protector of this temple, stands in her way. Outwardly, Saber should be the stronger of the two, but somehow Assassin is able to keep her at bay easily. As Caster moves closer to end Shirou, a volley of arrows suddenly rain between the two, forcing Caster back as Archer enters the scene, dispelling Caster's binding on Shirou. He quickly explains Saber is also here, but held up by Assassin, so they likely have two enemy masters to worry about. Caster then laughs, remarking Assassin has no master, and her master isn't cooperating with anyone. She then reveals that with her own power, she has summoned Assassin herself, and though a servant has summoned another servant, this assassin is not the proper heroic spirit assassin summoned by the Grail. Archer then surmises she is going on unchecked by her master, as she likely has her weak master restrained as a puppet, like how Shirou is, which Caster confirms. Reacting quickly, Archer summons his short swords and slashes through Caster all too easily, which he finds awfully suspicious. Despite the battle going on, Shirou is captivated by the short swords, and from above, Caster reveals herself flying high, summoning orbs of light that rain down to carpet bomb the temple. Doing his best to deflect the high-level magic, Archer hurries to grab Shirou and carry him out of the area. Flinging his short swords as he escapes, he catches Caster off guard as he cuts her flying cloak off of her, and in that instant, lets loose his noble phantasm. The shot isn't a direct hit on purpose, but just its area of effect stops Caster dead in her tracks as she hurries to teleport away while healing herself. When asked why he didn't kill her, Archer replies he simply didn't want a meaningless battle, which she laughs out is the exact same response Shirou gave earlier, likening the two, before she is allowed to get away. As they pull back, Archer explains the better move would be to defeat the Master, especially since it's apparent how he is not a strong Master. Also, Caster is more fixated on defeating Berserker, so it would be to their benefit to let her do that first before defeating her, regardless of the collateral damage, as it would be a lower cost than if she won the war. Shirou is furious at this logic but cannot deny its truth. As he turns to pursue Caster on his own, Archer slashes down Shirou with a fatal wound, and Shirou tumbles down the temple stairs, interrupting Saber and Assassin's duel. Saber pauses to protect Shirou, and Assassin is oddly content to let them retreat and go, as he would much prefer them to settle this match in a better suited battlefield sometime later. Archer does not let up his pursuit of Shirou, charging in to end him, but unexpectedly, Assassin now keeps back Archer, refusing to let him attack after he just told Saber she could leave. As he limps away, Shirou is hateful of Archer, but entranced by his dual-wielding fighting style, somehow sensing it's something he can emulate himself. As they get home, his wounds have already begun to regenerate, and after talking more with Saber, she approves of Archer's fighting style and agrees Shirou can learn it too if he trains, and so Shirou decides to begin training immediately. It turns out Shirou is an oddly prodigious study, quickly adapting to Saber's fighting speed, and doing so mainly by copying Archer. At school, Rin sincerely apologizes for how Archer acted, telling Shirou she even used her second command spell to ensure Archer would never attack him again as long as they were cooperating. She also mentioned that his rationale was that once he saw how easily Shirou fell to Caster's spell, it was better to kill Shirou rather than lose Saber to the enemy. Changing the subject, the two spend the rest of the day chatting and enjoying each other's company. Rin explains more about her magic, which is conversion, that is the accumulation, flow, and transformation of power, utilizing jewels as storage vessels. Shirou then reveals that Shinji, whose servant, is making the deadly barrier around the school, mainly because Shinji himself belongs to a dead magic bloodline. Suddenly, the barrier in question around the school activates, and seeing it knocking out and consuming the normal people within, Shirou uses his second command spell to summon Saber to his side. Preparing to battle a servant they know is nearby, they are surprised to now see skeletal golems begin to surround them. Finding their way to the origin point of the boundary field, they find Shinji, but more surprising they find his servant Ryder nearby, dead on the floor with her neck ripped apart from a single blow. She soon fades away, and the boundary field with her, thus removing Shinji's status as a master, but the question of who killed Ryder still remains. Shinji flees, and while Shirou and Rin contact Kirei in the church to help the victims, Saber defeats Caster, though it was just another shadow. Given what they know, it stands to reason Caster's master is also at their school and it was Caster that killed Ryder. Given how they haven't been attacked, it stands to reason Caster's master does not know they are masters for some reason. Archer points out Caster is not the type to be under someone, and given what he learned earlier, her master is likely someone she is already controlling as a puppet. Their new focus is now investigating who the fourth master at their school is, though the only person Shirou knows who is connected to Ryudo Temple is his friend Issei, who has declared its successor. Rin believes Issei is suspicious, but defending his friend, Shirou goes to Issei himself, asking him to strip naked for research purposes. He doesn't find a command spell to Shirou's relief, though Issei does mention a strange woman is currently staying at their temple, but she seems like a nice person. At the same time, Shinji flees to the church for sanctuary and formally withdraw from the war. Prideful, he blames his loss on everyone and everything but himself, and Kirei asks him if he still wants to fight, as there so happens to be an extra servant available. That evening, Shirou runs into a strange woman in the market and later into Rin, who notes a strange blonde man now outside Shinji's house. They sense they should avoid him for now, and do so, as Shirou updates her that Issei is not a master. Later at school, Shirou knows Soichiro is rather familiar with Issei, and when asked, Issei explains Soichiro is like an older brother to him, even having stayed at his place in Ryoto Temple for the last 3 years. What more, the strange woman that suddenly came to the temple is apparently Soichiro's fiancée, though for some reason Issei does not know her name. With this new information dropped in his lap, Shirou quickly tells Rin, who is intrigued since Soichiro is not even a magus to begin with, but regardless makes the call that they should corner him tonight. They create an ambush for him, but right when they are about to strike, Caster appears next to him to guard him. Now exposed, Soichiro recognizes them, and when asked if he is a puppet, he admits he somewhat is, but also states he also agrees with Caster anyway, not caring about strangers or the Holy Grail War. He reveals he is a former assassin, but is more interested in surviving, so he only kills those who are attacking him, much like Shirou. As he leaves Caster to deal with them, Saber charges in, highly resistant to Caster's magic, and slashes expertly at Soichiro, only to be shocked that her invisible sword is stopped barehanded by him. Even more surprising, Soichiro's close quarters combat style and assassin training are empowered by magic, and his blows land solidly against Saber's vital points. He weaves past her defenses with his snake-like style and sinks his hand into her neck and flings her into a wall with deadly force, each blow being fatal. Unshaken, he explains normally the master supports the servant, but here he reveals the servant supports him, as he is more than able to attack head-on. Knowing his weakness is range attacks, he focuses on Rin next, and as Shirou jumps in between them, he desperately wishes for a weapon powerful enough to stop Soichiro. With his limited reproduction and strengthening magic, Shirou produces the yin and yang blades wielded by Archer, weapons secretly coveted by Shirou, and succeeds in parrying Soichiro before they shatter. In this time bought, Saber regenerates a bit of her damage and prepares to defeat Caster, who is caught off guard, as is Soichiro by Shirou's defense. Now in a disadvantageous position as the same surprise attack won't work on Saber again, Soichiro calls for their retreat and reluctantly Caster teleports them both away. Rin figures there is now no reason for Soichiro to leave the temple and will wait for them to attack the temple's defenses and Assassin's Guard. She also now remarks on Shirou's weapon conjuration, something he never did before, and he reveals he also knows limited projection magic, but rarely uses it as it usually only makes useless hollow replicas, and tonight was entirely a fluke. Elsewhere, we see Shinji reflecting on how his father wanted to end the Mato bloodline, but his grandfather wished to revive it, and as he enters the basement of his house where strange worms are being grown for a specific purpose, he greets the golden man from before, Archer. Shinji says Kirei intends to overlook anything they do, and with this he urges Archer to kill anyone he needs to become strong enough to defeat Saber and get his revenge on Shirou. Archer, however, does not heed Shinji, reminding him he is only lending him his power as they both seek the Grail, but first there is something else they must obtain. Back with Shirou, he strategizes with Rin and Saber on beating Caster, and Rin observes that Shirou should work on his projection magic if he is to be a viable force. Though he's been hiding it from them, Shirou's entire left side has gone numb since the fight, and has not been healing. Oddly, Archer not only recognizes it, but knows exactly how to correct it, revealing it's simply new magic circuits awakening in his body, and he himself went through a similar experience once. However, he then points out the fruitlessness of chasing ideals like Shirou does, especially since his dream of being a hero and saving someone is not his originally. The next day, Rin declares she is going out on a date with Shirou, and while unexpected, he has no choice but to accept, as Saber accompanies them as a silent guardian. Rin and Shirou have a fun date as normal people for once, though once they return, they immediately notice a protective ward normally around Shirou's house is suddenly gone. Hurrying in, they find Caster waiting there for Shirou with Fujimura as a hostage. She explains fighting here is useless as this is only another shadow, and with the entire town under her control, she has limitless magical power, so it's clear she will win the Grail. She demands Shirou's subordination, and again he refuses, though she points out she knows of a trick behind the Holy Grail that can summon it without them fighting. All she needs is Saber, so she instead asks for just his command spell in exchange for the hostage, and accepting this, Shirou submits. Taking out a strange dagger, Caster then strikes at Shirou, but in that instant, Saber leaps in to block the attack. She is stabbed by the dagger that Caster reveals to be her noble phantasm, Rule Breaker, which is a ritual blade that does no damage, but instead creates betrayal, overturning any contract or rules binding a person, including magic. Shirou's command spells now transfer over to Caster, and Saber now becomes Caster's familiar. Having what she came for, she now turns to kill Rin and eliminate Archer from the battle. Compelled to obey, Saber slashes at Rin, but Shirou shields Rin with his body, and resisting with all her might, Saber urges them to run. They escape back to Rin's house where Archer is, and unfortunately discover Shirou's wounds are not healing to their own anymore. As he heals thanks to Rin's magic, Shirou spots the pendant used to resurrect him, and realizes he owes his life to Rin ever since Lancer kills him. His will to fight for Saber back remains, and as Rin and Archer both agree, Shirou cannot do anything in this war anymore, and leave him to continue the fight on their own. Elsewhere, Caster decides to make her move on the Holy Grail, going to the church, killing Kirei the priest, but finding the vessel for the Holy Veil is not there. Saber continues to resist Caster's command spell, as well as being dressed up and tortured by her, but Caster is patient and enjoying the process. Soichiro now arrives, surprising Caster, and while he questions her independent actions, he does not disagree with them, agreeing to guard the church now while Caster seeks out the vessel. Meanwhile, Shirou is determined to fight alongside Rin, though unfortunately as the fight begins, Archer betrays Rin to join Caster as the person most likely to win, identifying her as the witch Medea, and allowing himself to be struck by Rule Breaker and stripping Rin of her command spell as well. Shirou leaps down to protect her as they fall back as Caster allows them to leave per Archer's request. Rin is depressed at failing at something so major, but Shirou reminds her that just because she failed, that doesn't mean she was wrong, choosing to still believe in her ability to come back from this. He confesses he's always admired her, and shows her the pendant she saved his life with, confessing that his feelings for her have only gotten stronger with the recent events. She's embarrassed, and instead thanks him for saving her life in return, as she offers for them to continue working together. Back home, he's still recovering, and Rin explains she has been investigating where Ilia and Berserker live in order to talk to them, and the two make the trip past a seemingly endless forest to a castle-like building. When they arrive, they hear the sounds of battle within and opt to sneak in. Within, they see Shinji looking smugly at the battle unfolding as Berserker is getting pushed back to a despairing Ilia. Before them is the blonde Archer, flinging an endless torrent of devastating noble phantasms at Berserker, easily blowing him away and cutting past his fearsome regeneration. Shirou instinctively knows every noble phantasm Archer is using is the true original one from before each of them ever became legend. Not to mention, it's perplexing how there is suddenly another servant in this war. Berserker's brute strength and fortitude are not enough even as he shields Ilia with his body and is killed over 10 times over. Using a god-binding chain against the demigod, Archer finally immobilizes Berserker, and even Ilia is prevented from calling him back. With a final barrage, Archer slays Berserker another 10 times over, and this proves to be too much for even Berserker's noble phantasm that allows him to survive being killed 12 times over. As the defeated Ilia runs over to her dissolving servant, Archer slashes her through the eyes, then the lungs, and then moves to finish her off with his bare hands. We then pause to observe the history of the Einsbern family, that has spent 1,000 years searching for the Holy Grail, and have succeeded in forging the vessel for it. With the help of others, they learn of a ritual to fill the vessel, but make many enemies in doing so. In the first Holy Grail war, they did not win, but in the second war, they found a loophole in the rules to be able to cheat and pull out the strongest card. In the third war, they summoned what they shouldn't have. In the fourth war, they succeeded in pulling the strongest card, and were sure of their victory with the master they had. However, both the servant and master betrayed them, as the man chose to leave his wife and child behind and destroy the Holy Grail. Ever since, the family chose never to trust outsiders again, and in the current fifth war, they again prepared the strongest master and servant. They created Berserker before the Holy Grail summoned him, and bound him to Ilia and her energy, and then threw them in the harsh cold to train and survive together. Part of this bond meant that every time Berserker even moved, it painfully took energy from Ilia, to the point where Ilia gradually became numb to the pain, but took Berserker's sanity almost as revenge for his existence. However, over time, they forged a bond through the pain and loneliness, and began to depend on each other as they entered a war they were fated to fight in. Back to the present, Shirou is compelled to leap out and protect Ilia, but is too late as the Gold Archer rips Ilia's heart out of her body, and then turns to face Shirou. Shinji orders Archer to pause, but then Rin orders Shinji to stand down with a spell aimed right for him. Archer is amused at the situation, and suggests Rin as the new vessel, but points out they don't have much time as Ilia's heart begins to rot in his hand. After they leave for now, Rin chastises Shirou for being so reckless, and always trying to save people at the cost of himself. She points out his way of thinking is backwards, and he cannot live a thankless life of self-sacrifice just because of the horrible events he survived 10 years ago. Shirou is still unconvinced, though they spend the rest of the evening burying Ilia alongside the sand remaining of her servant after he dissolved. Now in a worse position, Shirou identifies Archer's identity as the legendary Gilgamesh, and figures his noble phantasm to actually be his legendary treasury. Knowing this, Shirou then thinks that if Gilgamesh has a weakness, it's that because he has so many weapons is also why he has mastered none of them, but that still leaves them low on options. At this time, they are suddenly approached by Lancer, who recognizes the two of them are no match for Caster and offers to lend them his aid. He also says his own master has ordered this and has declined the unpredictable and untrustworthy Shinji and Gilgamesh. Despite being killed by him, Shinji chooses to trust Lancer and warns him around being Rin as per his flirtatious attitude. Coming up with a plan, Shirou and Rin are to attack Caster and Soichiro as Lancer holds off Archer and at worst, Saber. Lancer's specialty is actually defensive fighting, and mentions they don't have to worry about Assassin as per his bizarre summoning, he cannot leave the temple, and the battlefield will actually be in the church. As they prepare for the final battle of Caster, Archer is there waiting for them, and immediately Lancer engages him, forcing his attention and preventing him from interfering with Rin's plan. Dashing into the church, Caster is unsurprised at their arrival as combat erupts out. Outside, Lancer is putting pressure on Archer as he is no longer bound by his master's initial command of fight everyone to survive to learn about them, like the first time they met. Archer also identifies Lancer's true name as Kohulin, and in return, Lancer uses his noble phantasm Gabolg on Archer, who in turn chooses to stop the unstoppable Lance with the Ice Shield, a noble phantasm that can block any ranged attack. Despite this, the spear destroys the shield and strikes Archer hard, but not fatally. He remarks Lancer is the first person to destroy that shield, but Lancer takes it as a loss since it wasn't a sure kill. More than that, it's perplexing who Archer really is to have such a shield on him, despite it costing him all his energy. Archer then points out Caster is no longer watching them, and his only objective is the path with the greatest chance of victory. Catching the subtle meaning, Lancer smirks and steps back after his victory, choosing to now watch from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Shirou is barely defending against Soichiro, and Rin makes no progress against Caster. Caster stops the gloat for a second, which is a large enough window for Rin to suddenly charge in with her bare hands and suddenly execute martial arts with empowered arms just like Soichiro. Being surprised as well as weak against melee attacks, Caster is now on the ropes, and right before Soichiro is about to finish Shirou, he dashes in instead to intercept Rin. They opt to get away with Saber, but at this time, Caster now notes the magical presence above them that has generated a flurry of weapons and hurls them at Soichiro. Too injured to block them with magic, she shields him with her own body, and now dying, turns to Soichiro to wish him a heartfelt goodbye, thankful for being with him despite their odd relationship till now. She dies, but Shirou is more distracted by the fact that the spell Archer used for the attack, Trace On, is only ever used by himself personally. Soichiro accuses Archer of treachery from the start, and Archer points out this method was more of a Trojan horse strategy. Shirou asks Soichiro to stop now that he is no longer a master. Soichiro attacks Archer lacking any magical empowerment now, and Archer accepts the final hit out of respect, and then easily cuts down the assassin-turned-teacher for good. Saber is now freed of her bonds and Shirou goes to check on her, but she quickly dons her armor and shields him instead, as Archer has wasted no time in making a sneak attack on Shirou again. Rin commands him to stop, but Archer points out she is no longer his master, even after Caster died, so he is free to act as he wants to now. He explains Caster's ability to nullify contracts was the whole reason he sided with her, and is now focused on killing Shirou, though Saber still supports him. Even though they are not bound by a contract, she still gave her word to protect him, and as a knight she will not betray him even though he can no longer help her get the grail. Unfortunately, being starved for magic energy and tortured for so long has left her sapped of strength, so she cannot oppose him to much effect. Shirou then steps up to oppose Archer, knowing he doesn't stand a chance, but just then, Rin utters a summoning oath, directed at Saber, and Saber accepts Rin as her new master, erupting with unlocked power now that she is backed by a true magus. Archer is forced to back down now, muttering that he is going to allow this partnership to happen anyway, and in a short clash he is brought down to one knee. Refusing to give up on his goal to kill Shirou, he unleashes his noble phantasm, Unlimited Blade Works, and suddenly they are pulled to another world, a steel manufacturing factory in a desert littered with famous swords. Rin explains this is a reality marble, where its user's will overrides reality, and it's revealed Archer was a magus before becoming a heroic spirit, and this world is his true noble phantasm, wherein he stores a copy of any weapon he's ever seen before. Summoning weapons around him, he is able to fire them off at Saber, and suddenly Shirou leaps in to analyze and reproduce over a dozen weapons at once. The reality marble falls, and quickly Archer seizes Rin and knocks her out, telling Saber he cannot defeat them all at once and will take her away for now. Shirou calls him out to the Einsbern castle to settle things, and Archer accepts, saying he will wait 1 day for them, as after 2 days he will disappear without a master. Exiting, they spot Lancer, and explaining the new developments to him, he becomes furious at Archer's betrayal to Rin, and states he will continue to aid them a little longer. As she's unconscious, Rin has a dream from her connection with Archer. She sees he is a man who has lived a life filled with self-sacrifice, countless betrayals, and constant loneliness, all fueled by his incessant chase and self-satisfaction of saving others, even selling himself to gain the powers of a hero to accomplish it, thus cursing himself to endless battlefields. She then realizes that a heroic spirit is summoned into any era, thus that means they can come from any era, even the future, and it's very possible they can be summoned into a time they originally lived in. It then becomes painfully obvious to her that Archer and Shirou are the same person, but from different times, and the gap between them is the source of their enmity. She now knows that Shirou will doom himself to a hell of constant battles and death surrounding him, betrayed by the very ideals he sold himself to obtain. She then wakes up, bound by Archer. Archer repeats he cannot stand seeing the soft-hearted Shirou, and Rin counters that softness is exactly what she loves about him. Back with Shirou, he's recovering with help from Saber, who prepares to go after her master Rin now. Shirou insists he'll be the one to fight Archer, even though they both know now the undeniable truth of who Archer really is. Lancer tags along as they make their way to the castle. Within the castle, Shinji enters the scene with Archer and Rin, interested in claiming Rin, and Archer states that after he kills Shirou, Shinji can have Rin, but if they interrupt him before that, he'll take him and Gilgamesh out. As Archer walks past them, Gilgamesh spits out the word faker, but lets him on his way. It's not long before Shirou arrives, and the two speak. As it turns out, Archer also has the same exact pendant used by Rin to revive Shirou, as there is only one, and it's a memento he kept his entire life. As a catalyst is always needed to summon a heroic spirit, and though Rin did not have one to him, he did have one to her ever since she saved his life. Thus, Shirou looks upon the heroic spirit of himself from the future if he were to continue his ideals and perfect his skills. Lancer breaks off to go rescue Rin from Shinji, and Saber asks Archer why, since he is the personification of everything Shirou strives to be, is he so radically different from Shirou now? Archer replies that he did achieve his dream of becoming a superhero, but the only reward in the end is always regret and more death. You kill and become a cleaner of an endless mess, and in order to save one person you end up trampling over many others. Since heroes can only exist during conflict, the cycle never ends, and over time he realizes since he cannot make others happy, his ideal has just been a convenient fantasy. In the end, he would be executed for being the cause of strife he constantly fought. He himself could not break out of the cycle except for one way, and that is ending it before it begins by killing Shirou. As they each draw their short swords, their duel begins. Elsewhere, Lancer knocks out Shinji as he has begun beating up a captive Rin, but he is shocked when his master, the priest Kirei, appears behind him, a man thought killed by Caster. He wonders why Lancer did not kill Archer as ordered, but is here to retrieve Rin per his own plan. Rin suspected the priest of deception, but not this, and as it all comes out, Kirei is not only a master in this war, but is the one who killed Rin's father in the last war. Also, Kirei is here to turn Rin into the Holy Grail. He orders Lancer, who has been ordered before to protect Rin, to now remove her heart, but Lancer refuses. Outliving his usefulness, Kirei then uses a command seal to order Lancer to kill himself, which he does, impaling himself with his own spear, but before he dies, he swiftly turns and stabs Kirei through the heart as well with his demonic lance, getting his revenge before dying. Laughing now, Shinji proclaims victory, but a persistent Lancer stabs him in the shoulder to scare him away, and cuts free Rin. Rin thanks him sincerely, and Lancer slumps over, using the last of his energy to burn the room completely after Rin escapes. As Shirou fights for his life, memories from Archer flow into him, including his gruesome end at the end of his path. Archer observes Shirou visibly improve the more they fight, and has heard of magic that allows one to acquire skills by possessing yourself with a previous self, and feels this bleeding effect may be occurring here. More than that, Archer points out what Shirou strives for is not saving for the self-satisfaction of saving, but to experience the salvation and joy he saw on Kiritsugu's face when Shirou was rescued from the fire he helped cause 10 years ago. In admiration of this same man, he adopted this man's hollow dream, even though he never desired it originally himself. Thus, that ideal of everyone else is more important than him, and everyone should be happy, is a fantasy and a failure. Broken and beaten, Shirou chooses to spite Archer the most personal way he can, and begins reciting the incantation for his noble phantasm, then lunging with such ferocity even Archer is forced back. Seeing Archer as another obstacle to climb over if he truly believes in his dreams, Shirou inexplicably begins to gain the upper hand, surprising Archer most of all, and through sheer grit lands a killing blow into the Red Knight, winning the duel. Archer admits his defeat and does not counterattack even though he could, and Shirou's regeneration begins again thanks to a sheath Archer noted within him earlier. Rin now emerges from her captivity, though right as she does, a volley of weapons rain down on Shirou. The archer pushes him away and is skewered by the attack. Gilgamesh now emerges, amused at the duel between fakers, and greets Saber after 10 years. He again attacks, and again Archer saves Shirou, silently telling him that Shirou will be the one who can defeat Gilgamesh as he stops moving. The Gold Archer then explains that thanks to the knowledge and resources of his master, he remained after the last war 10 years ago, also thanks to the contents of the Holy Grail. He now declares only he is fit to handle the Grail, as he personally experienced its contents 10 years ago. The Grail is a filter that turns souls into pure magical energy. The 7 servants summoned are powerful souls that act as sacrifices to fill the Grail that Magi prepare a vessel of. The sheer amount of power within is then enough to grant any wish, and thus why 6 heroic spirits are enough to fill the Grail. He then states that all 7 are enough to trigger the Grail's ability to serve as a gate to hell, and billions of curses will flow out once opened. The Holy Grail is also named Angramayu, or the Evils of the World, which is also the name of the ancient Persian devil. With the cursed mud that fills the Grail, he will cleanse the world of all the ugly humans with the flames of hell, and anyone who survives is worthy to be ruled by him. Just then, the flames started by Lancer catch up to him, and Gilgamesh ceases his attack, concerned at getting dirty now. He states he will quickly open the gate to hell, as the Holy Grail this time was hurriedly constructed and will not last long. With that, he meets up with Shinji, who is nursing the wound Lancer gave him and blaming all of his problems on Gilgamesh now. He reassures Shinji there is still a master they can use as the vessel, and with that thrusts his fist through Shinji's chest, converting him into a Holy Grail, though Shinji's weak body mutates into an abomination under the process. Shirou, Rin, and Saber return home after an eventful day, bittersweet, as despite Shirou's victory and Rin's rescue, Gilgamesh has the Holy Grail now, so it's inevitable they will fight him next. Not only that, but regardless of how things go, their next battle will be their last, as the Holy Grail War will end one way or the other. Formulating a strategy now, they know the Grail is being summoned at Ryudo Temple, and because of the wards there, they can only enter through the front gate. Rin suddenly has an idea on how to counter Gilgamesh, and reveals it to be Archer's magic. Gilgamesh is powerful mainly because of the sheer number of weapons he can throw at an enemy, but if he were to encounter someone who can do the same, he would have no advantage. Shirou can't produce that many with his level currently, but if he did what Archer did and creates a reality marble, then he could override reality and have countless weapons. Rin then nervously points out he can do it if he simply has enough magical energy, and he can connect his magic circuit to hers if they connect their bodies through sex. As they ensure the magic transfer is complete through simultaneous climax, Shirou is now receiving enough magical energy from Rin to not only make more projections, but also his own reality marble. After preparations are complete, the plan is for Saber to get Gilgamesh's attention in the front, while Shirou and Rin sneak around the back and destroy the Holy Grail vessel. Splitting up as per plan, Saber is shocked to see Assassin still guarding the gate to the temple. As it turns out, Assassin is bound to this mountain and not Caster, thus when Caster disappeared he did not. Even then, his magical energy reserve will run out soon enough, and he reveals he is not actually Sasaki Kojiro, and is just a fictional heroic spirit best suited to play that role. As a false nameless servant, he still desires a true fight with a real swordsman, so Saber is forced to oblige. As their duel resumes, Saber's strength and instincts edge out a win against Assassin's speed and deadly precision, dispelling the false servant for good. Meanwhile, Shirou and Rin spot the Holy Grail formed from Shinji, which is now a colossal blob of flesh occupying a mountain lake, spewing cursed mud. They see a barely human Shinji still attached to the blob, but it looks like it's about to explode, meaning there is little time left to stop it before the gate opens. They decide to rescue Shinji, despite it being Shinji, but Gilgamesh steps out, surprising them and ready to stop their plan. Shirou steps up to engage, able to summon weapons in an instant now, but is still pushed to his limit, keeping up with Gilgamesh's lethal speed. Gilgamesh then produces his own personal weapon, one Shirou cannot duplicate for some reason, and knocks him away with a single blow. Fading in and out of consciousness, Shirou sees the world he wants to create for himself and realizes what he must do to win. Saber now catches up, but he sends her to save Rin and destroy the Holy Grail. As Gilgamesh mocks and hurls more weapons at him, Shirou begins to chant his own incantation, a poem about himself, succeeding in releasing his forbidden magic and reality marble, Unlimited Blade Works. Outside, Saber witnesses the Holy Grail blob and notes the energy and material it's made of is the same as a servant and wonders what the connection is. Within, Rin has freed Shinji safely, but after crossing the cursed mud and freeing him, as well as fueling Shirou and Saber with magical power herself, Rin is drained and struggles to escape. Just then, she hears the voice of her archer to tell her to get moving, as arrows begin raining down, tearing the Grail apart and cutting a path open for Rin. As she escapes, she orders Saber to use her noble phantasm to destroy the grail, and with an explosive single blow, Saber uses all of her energy to vaporize the cursed relic. As the grail disappears, so too does Saber, with mixed feelings on destroying the very thing she thought could save her, but accepting the victory for Rin. As Shirou and Gilgamesh stand in Shirou's world, he reveals he doesn't actually create swords, but rather creates a world of infinite swords. He admits all of the swords here are imitations, but points out it's not a rule that an imitation cannot surpass the original. As the fight kicks up, for every weapon Gilgamesh now produces, the copy is already here in this reality, and is ready to counter, and it's now Gilgamesh getting pushed back. He readies his signature blade, but expecting this, Shirou dashes in with his signature twin blades and cuts off the sword arm of Gilgamesh. Before he can cut him again, the reality marble drops in response to the destruction of the Holy Grail, and suddenly a black void opens on Gilgamesh. As he gets sucked in, he snares Shirou with a chain and attempts to pull himself out as Shirou is left at his side to stand his ground and let Gilgamesh live, or sacrifice himself so they both die. Just in time, he hears the smug words of Archer, as an expertly placed headshot stuns Gilgamesh long enough to loose his grip and sink into the void before it disappears. As the dawn rises on a new day, the battle is won and the war is over, with Rin as the last master standing. Seeing Rin over by Archer, he allows her to say his goodbyes for him. As the red night begins to fade away, he says his battle is finally over, as Rin has genuinely enjoyed having the proud servant as her partner. He asks her to take care of Shirou going forward, as they both know how unreliable he is. She promises to stay by him and support him to like himself and not end up twisted like Archer. With a genuine smile, his hair falls down into a familiar mess and disappears to rest just as quickly. As the game ends, a month passes and life returns to normal, as any damage caused by the war is covered up by the church. Shinji is hospitalized but recovering, and the war has humbled him into a better personality. Shirou has begun learning magic under Rin, though the relationship is more personal than that. She announces that after a year she'll be attending the clock tower in London to continue her Magus training, and she's allowed to take one assistant with her, meaning if Shirou comes along, he can study magic as well without being a part of the Magic Association this way. To further his ideals, as well as follow the woman he loves, he accepts the plans for the future, looking forward to revisiting the world he made for himself. Fate Stay Night has enjoyed the success of selling over 250,000 copies worldwide.